So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to see here, get this moving. There we go. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to get things started with a little bit of an overview of local ordinances and the different policy structures. And then I'm going to hand things off to Jasmine and Eric, and they are going to do a walkthrough of the Explorer and highlight a bunch of the features that we've recently added, as well as show you how to create a policy, a new construction policy. Following that, I'll wrap things up a little bit with an overview of some of the other resources that we also provide through the program, and we'll have a quick question and answer session. So we should go ahead and get started. Okay, I think pretty much everybody on the call already knows this, but just to set our scope here and to get everybody here focused on the same page, what's a REACH code? Again, you know, but a REACH code's an ordinance that amends oftentimes the building code. It may amend a different code also, but generally it's the building code, and it requires projects to exceed the minimum state requirements. Okay. Those ordinances that are based on the building code have to be renewed every 3 years. We are currently ready to start the 2022 code cycle. And just for those that aren't too used to the code cycles, those cycles are not named very intuitively. The 2022 code cycle actually runs from 2023 through 2025. We currently refer to the current cycle as 2019 cycle. So just so you know, when you hear those, that we're talking actually about the next 3 years. Okay, so when you're developing an ordinance that targets new construction, there's several considerations, a lot of different questions that you ask yourself and that you need to ask others as well. I'm not going to go into any details on these, but I wanted to cover them just as they're typically some of the things that you're thinking when you start using the Explorer. And the tool can actually provide you with some pretty easily accessible information to help inform your decisions on these things. So some of the basic considerations when you're developing an ordinance is, are you going to require all electric construction? If you are, is it going to be for all occupancy types or a subset? Again, are you going to require it for outdoor gas equipment as well as equipment in the home? This is a topic that's come up recently, and there are some jurisdictions that are seeing a whole lot of outdoor gas appliance use. And so they've asked about that. So that's another consideration. If you have an exception or any exemptions, will you require that those projects install readiness measures, basically, so that they're prepared to go electric? And lastly, will you have exemptions? And if so, what will those be? That tends to be one of the biggest conversations we've had, and that list of exemptions has been getting refined over time as different jurisdictions adopt ordinances. And so there are a couple lists of all the different exemptions that are out there. And so those are some considerations that you need to take in, some questions that you need to take into consideration as you start moving forward. Another big question is, will you include efficiency? Will you require people to design projects that are more efficient than the state requirements? If so, will it be all projects or just some projects? Another note here, this isn't really a question, but our single family study supports additional efficiency. That's something I just wanted to let folks know. We do not have the final results from the compliance software yet on the non-residential and multifamily occupancies. The teams are working on those and working with the CEC and the CEC's team to make sure that we get those done. Lastly, if you are going to include efficiency above code, the requirement has to be cost effective. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you can't require something that isn't cost effective if it's going to be above Part 6. And another very big question that has arisen in this cycle is whether or not to include what are typically deemed as substantial remodels as in new construction. So typically those homes are those that where people tear down basically the whole house. Maybe they leave the framing for one wall or just a part of a wall or something like that. But effectively, they're doing new construction. There are a lot of considerations to take into your assessment here. There are many different requirements that come into play if something is deemed new construction. For example, fire sprinklers might be required. So there's that. It may impact somebody's taxes. So if you are planning to do that, I highly recommend that you talk with first your building official and other internal stakeholders to make sure that anything you adopt in this ordinance is consistent with other definitions that are being used already in the city. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And so as you move through the Explorer, it's likely that some of these answers are going to lead you to, or guide you to one of these approaches, okay? And there's a lot of information on the screen, but it's not super complex here. So I just want to run through them fairly quickly. If you just stick with me for a minute, we can run through this. This is something you probably won't decide up front, but the Explorer can actually help you make the decision as to which way you'd like to head. Okay, so we talked about the fact that the question of efficiency. Do you want to include efficiency in your code? If you do, the mechanism for doing that is the energy code. And in this case, if you had just a standard efficiency requirement, you say basically all new construction exceeds the code by some percentage or some margin. Okay, it's a pretty simple breach code. It's historically how most ordinances were structured. Preserves choice for the builders. They can choose either mixed fuel or all electric designs. And you could have either a performance requirement or you could require specific measures. For example, a cool roof or something like that if you wanted to. Another option is just to require that is what we call electric preferred. And that basically means that mixed fuel projects have to meet a higher bar than all electric projects. So far, those ordinances have been structured so that all electric projects only have to meet the minimum state code, and then mixed fuel projects have to exceed them. That isn't a definitive structure that you have to use. You could set that bar anywhere you like with this kind of a structure, as long as, again, since you're requiring that projects exceed the energy code, as long as it's cost effective. Okay, so you're still preserving choice. But encouraging. This is a way to encourage builders to go to all electric because it is easier. So it gets you a little bit more greenhouse gas savings than just a standard efficiency, lower than an all electric. Okay, and then we have an electric only option, another way to go. There's two different paths for that. We've termed them this way, but really effectively they're requiring the same thing, which is that new construction be all electric and not use fuel gas. These are just two different mechanisms that you can use to adopt an ordinance. One is to modify a municipal code, such as a health and safety code or something like that directly. Zoning has also been mentioned. Most folks look at health and safety though. And the other is to modify the building code via CalGreen or Part 11 of the building code. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Effectively, they have the same effect, but they tend to target different things in the ordinance. One tends to prohibit any new gas. The other just tends to focus on the electric only side. That's really just the way that they're structured. Again, effectively, these are essentially the same requirement from a builder's perspective and from the resulting buildings. If you do go the building code route, you have to renew it every 3 years. That's with any ordinance that modifies the building code has to modify the current building code. So it has to stay in step with the building code. Municipal ordinances don't have a cycle like that they need to be updated. They could stay in perpetuity in theory. However, most jurisdictions have an internal review schedule, and they do review those ordinances on some sort of periodic schedule. Okay. Lastly, this is a little bit of a combination. This is the kind of the biggest impact option, and that is to use one of these electric-only mechanisms to require all electric construction, and then also require that it's efficient all electric construction, so it exceeds the minimum state requirements. The single family study supports this in many climate zones, I believe in all climate zones actually to some level, and it is cost effective. It is the biggest impact, both from an energy savings and a greenhouse gas savings perspective. If you do modify, again, the building code, you have to renew it with the building code cycles. So that's just something to keep in mind about that one. Okay. So why do we need cost effectiveness analysis? And how do we know something's cost effective? I'm just going to keep this at a high level. We actually we did a series of webinars, and one of those webinars was focused on cost effectiveness, and it gets into a whole lot of details about cost effectiveness in this arena. And so I encourage you to check out our YouTube channel to look at that video if you'd like more information on cost effectiveness. But today I'm going to keep things a little bit high level since our focus is really the tool and not the analysis behind it. Okay. So historically, the main purpose for a cost effectiveness study is to meet a specific legal requirement. We're looking to identify a cost-effective and non-preempted package that can support an ordinance that modifies the energy code. Even though now the ordinances often modify different other codes, Cal Green and perhaps a municipal code, and don't legally require a cost effectiveness analysis, the study still fulfills several other needs, including showing a range of different improvements that one can use to craft a policy. It also demonstrates that there are indeed available ways that someone can comply with the ordinance. And as we noted, it demonstrates that it meets the legal requirements. But even when there's not legal requirements, any policy that you adopt, it's really important to understand the economic impacts of those policies. And so understanding those impacts really helps you to make an informed decision about which direction you'd like to go. Okay, so how is it measured? In our reports, we typically use two different values. But there's also a third way that tends to be a little bit limited. And I'm going to start with that because it's something that people use on some fairly simple investments, and it can be adequate in some cases, and that is the simple payback. The simple payback simply measures how long it's going to take to recoup your incremental investment. Oftentimes when you are purchasing, for example, a more efficient equipment, or you're making an improvement to your home, there's an incremental investment, and then you oftentimes receive savings over time. And so the simple payback simply says, how long is it going to take me for those savings to pay for my initial investment? That's a little bit limited in that it doesn't account for any benefits you continue to gain after the investment's paid off. So it's a very simple and easy way to look at it, but it does have its limitations. We typically use the bottom two here, the benefit to cost ratio and the net present value metrics, to show whether a package is cost effective in our studies. And essentially what we're looking for is that a package or a measure over time yields more benefits than it costs. So that may be the utility cost savings, or there may be even a utility cost increase, and we have other savings. But what we're looking for here is that the benefits, the savings that we reap over the time of our analysis, actually exceed the value of the costs. All of these numbers are reported in what we call net present value. So when we're looking at it from today's perspective, the benefit to cost ratio is, it's actually a ratio as it notes, and it is the benefits divided by the costs. We're looking for a threshold of 1.0 or greater for something to be a cost-effective investment. So if it's less than 1, benefits are less than cost and not cost-effective. The net present value uses essentially the same benefits and costs, but it is a subtraction. It's benefits minus the cost. And in that case, we're looking for a positive value to show a cost-effective investment. Okay. So we have struggled over the years. We have several teams that work on these analyses, and we work really, really hard to try to organize the studies the best that we can. We know that there's a whole lot of information in them, and so we try to keep them as concise as possible and keep them as clear as possible. But unfortunately, we often have received feedback from our users that the studies actually feel a little bit more like this when people look at them than a report that is nice and concisely and well organized. Basically, there's so much information. They are so full of information, packed full, that they can be overwhelming. And because of that, this is the reason we actually decided to develop the tool, because people, as much as we tried, it was just really hard for people to pull all the information they needed from the study itself. And so this kind of feedback was really the impetus to us developing the tool. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jasmine and have her show you how the tool will actually help you make some great informed decisions. Thank you, Jasmine.
Awesome. Thanks, Misty. Misty, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. Yeah, so like Misty said, the Explorer is a tool designed to help jurisdictions like you review cost-effectiveness study results, and then also to build policies from those findings. So in a minute, Eric's going to walk you through our capabilities and show you how you might build a new construction policy for single-family homes. But first, I want to share some background about the Explorer and what we do. Thank you. So the Explorer is a free web tool designed specifically for California local government staff and stakeholders, like a lot of you on this meeting. The objective is to accelerate REACH code adoption and support data-driven decision-making during the policy design process. So we launched in fall 2020, and we have a number of features available with more to come and always in development. We include data from 6 statewide cost effectiveness studies, and we do have more coming. We also provide residential building stock estimates for each one of the 500 plus California cities and counties. And we have features to help users build one or more hypothetical policy scenarios, model their impact, and collaborate with colleagues on these policies. And instead of just telling you about these capabilities, we'd really love to show you what our tool can do. And so first, we want to start by saying that if you'd like to be sent a customized single-family new construction policy, like you're about to see in this following demonstration, if you could just type yes in the chat, we'll collect those answers and then we'll send one over to you after the meeting. And then we are going to hand off to Eric for a demonstration of the Explorer's capabilities.
Thank you, Jasmine. All right, can everybody see my screen there? I'll take that as a yes. All right. So first of all, how do you get to the Cost Effectiveness Explorer? There's a couple ways. You can directly go to explorer.localenergycodes.com, or if you're already at localenergycodes.com, you can go right up here and click Cost Effectiveness Explorer. There's also a way to do it down below where you type in your city right here on the localenergycodes.com website. So once you're there and you've typed in your city, and I've gone ahead and typed in City of Goleta just for demonstration purposes, you get to this summary page to start. And from here you can see already resources for the type of policy you're looking to build, whether it's an existing building policy or a new construction policy. You can also see a list of the cost effectiveness studies that we have or that are upcoming. And for each study, you can go ahead and see the results, download the PDF or just learn more about this study in general. And I'll do a quick overview of the basic Explorer features, and then we'll go into what everybody's waiting for, new construction policies. So building estimates is a great place to start to get a sense of what your city's building stock looks like today and what to expect in the near future for new building reach codes. So for here we have reviewing the residential building stock existing in the city of Goleta, broken down by single family and multifamily units. We can get more information about each of those here and see it break down by vintage and also a table of the actual values. If you want to download any of these into a CSV file, you can do so here or share these with a colleague. And all of these values are our estimates, but if you have your own, you can go ahead and input them here. And whether you're using the default estimates that the Explorer team has created or your own, these values will actually go into the calculations we'll see further down the line that calculate the projected impact of your policy. So you can also do that with new construction. We're assuming a modest growth rate year over year for each of the next 3 years of the building code cycle. But if you want to be more aggressive on that, you can click edit. You can get as complicated as you want, specifying different growth rates in different years for building types, climate zones, or any combination of those here. Or you can keep it really simple and do an overall growth rate. And then once you do that, you'll be able to save those projections that you just built to an existing policy, or any policy you create in the future will use the customized assumptions or data that you've inputted. So now I'm going to go back to the summary page, and I'm going to do a quick peek of the results area. So I'm going to explore results for our new construction results, and we have online right now pre-publication results for the new 2022 single family study. And they're shown in 2 different tables, one for all electric designs and one for mixed fuel designs. And we can see the measures and packages listed in each row. And then for each measure and package, we have various metrics directly from the cost effectiveness studies in each column. And then if you scroll past the per home results column, then we start to show some estimates generated by the Explorer about the citywide impact of requiring these packages. You can look further into those here, but I'm going to skip ahead and go back to what we're all here for, the new construction policies. So I can go and create a new construction policy right here from this page or from the summary page. I'm going to click new buildings. I'm going to name this demo. And we're ready. We now have a blank policy. And if the city of Goleta had more than one climate zone, we would have more climate zones here. If we were creating a policy for other building types, we would have that here, but this is an overview so far of what's in our policy. So I'm going to go ahead and add requirements for climate zone 6. And it's going to pull up this screen, which is our new construction policy configuration screen. So there's a lot going on here. I'll walk you through it. So the first section is just, these are the policy levers that we've built to give you options to configure a new construction policy. The second section, as you're building that policy, shows you what the citywide impact will be that we're projecting. And it's broken down into the all electric and mixed fuel. And then similarly, as you're building your policy, we'll show you the per home impact. And then finally, this section has to do with fuel choice. And so this is an important consideration in making a new construction policy. Unless you're requiring an all-electric design, any shift you make in requirements of one fuel type versus another is going to create an incentive one way or the other to encourage folks to build more all-electric designs or mixed fuel designs. And so we have a running cost comparison of here's what the cost incentive is to build all-electric without a REACH code, just under the 2022 base code. And then here's what the cost difference is under your policy. And since we don't have any requirements set up for our policy, it's the same. But having these two numbers front and center helps you manage these two assumptions, which are what percentage of homes under the base code without this REACH code do we expect will build all electric anyway? So we have a default assumption of 25%, and then as we build our policy, we'll look at how this incentive is changing, and then update this, update our expectation of how many folks will build all electric under our REACH code. And this will make more sense as I kind of go through some examples here. So now that I've oriented you to the four kind of basic sections of this page, we can then start playing with requirements. And so Misty went over 4 different policy types. And so we'll start with kind of the simplest one. And so that would be, and probably the most popular one, an all-electric code. So simply making all-electric designs mandatory. So we can go ahead and do that here in the fuel choice column. Set all-electric to mandatory. And it's calculated for us the number of expected units to be affected in the city of Goleta over the next 3 years, what the total compliance cost would be. And it's actually a compliance savings because the study results have shown that there is on average a savings to building all electric over mixed fuel, the total emission savings. And I've collapse this fuel choice incentive column, but you can see here that the tool has automatically changed our assumption of how many homes will be built all electric under this policy to 100% since it's a requirement. And so from here, we can then look at, well, what if we want to, in addition to requiring an all electric design, we also want to require that homes meet a higher compliance margin than simply the base code. So that's what I can do that here in the compliance margin column. And I can see that the tool has already found that in my climate zone, based on the study results, the maximum cost-effective compliance margin that I can require would be 11.6. So we can decide, okay, do we want to max this out all the way to 11.6 and then see what that's going to do to the compliance cost of our policy and the emission savings, both on a citywide basis and a per home basis. All right, so with that, I'm going to then show you what an electric preferred policy would look like. So let's bring back the option for builders and permit applicants to choose their fuel type. We're allowing both all electric and mixed fuel designs. I'm going to reset the all electric compliance margin to 0. And then let's look at requiring a compliance margin just for mixed fuel homes. Again, helping strengthen the cost savings of choosing all electric. So if we go to the maximum cost effective here, you can see here that now the financial incentive of choosing all electric is a savings of $14,700 instead of just $6,600. So based on that extra savings, we might say, okay, instead of 25% of builders choosing to build all electric, let's assume that that's going to bump things up to 35% all electric. So once we've got that dialed in, we can then see the citywide impacts and the emission savings of this proposed electric preferred policy. I know I've gone over a lot on this screen. Before I move away from it, does anyone want to jump in with any questions?
Eric,
Okay.
we do have a question from the previous screen from the results about the percentage that's next to the emissions savings number. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So for back on the results page, there is an emission savings. Let me find where that was. I think
I was struggling with that one a little bit too.
I can show it. I don't. Sorry.
It might be a column that I have showing you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that hint, Tara.
So yeah. So for just to put the emission savings for each package in context, 0.360 metric tons may not mean much. So we put it in terms of the percentage of the of the emissions, the percentage of the total emissions of that home that can be achieved with this package. So this represents reducing the emissions of that home by 30.4%. All right. I'll go back here to the screen we were on. If there's no more questions about the screen, I'll go ahead and show you one more new feature that we were excited to reveal. And that is, once you've gone ahead and configured your policy, it's time to do the work internally in your city to build support and get feedback from stakeholders on your policy, or even take it to a committee or council. You're going to need to prepare some documents. And so we have a new documents home for our virtual policies here, and it offers some helpful documents for that process. So the first item on the list is what we're calling the cost effectiveness evidence PDF. And this is simply a PDF of the results, the cost effectiveness results that are behind the policy requirements that you've created for your policy. So it's smart enough to know what how you built your policy. Is it a single family policy? Is it new construction? Is it based on this study? That's all in the back end. And so it's going to populate just the results for the policy we built into a nice PDF that you can feel free to, with citations and everything to the original study, so that you can feel free to use that as an attachment to a hearing, or to forward as part of your application package to the CEC, or just to share with stakeholders. So you can download that here, and it brings up this PDF, dated and referenced, or just for the study results that that are needed for the policy that you've just configured. Secondly, we have requirements tables, and that's a simple Excel table that distills your policy's requirements so that you can use that table to generate further internal documents, or to pop into your model ordinance when it's time to start drafting that policy. And we're a couple days away from having those requirements tables ready, but they'll look something like this, depending on the type of policy that you built. And then the third thing we have here is we have a new home for the model ordinances that the Reach Code team has has drafted and created, and it's continuously improving. And so from here, you can go directly to the model ordinance. This home, you can download the model ordinance that the Reach Code team has created that corresponds to the type of policy that you're working on. So yeah, with that, I will hand it back to Jasmine. We can wrap up. And thanks for listening. And if you do, like Jasmine said, if you do want the Explorer team to go ahead and create a virtual policy for your city specifically and just email you a link following this webinar, just type yes in the chat and we'll be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Misty, could you go 2 slides ahead? Or Tara, do you have a question?
I do, sorry. I had a question when you're looking at the policies, and one of the columns you can add is annual bill savings on bill. If that number is negative, does that mean that the annual bill for a particular customer would actually be increasing? I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, that's exactly what it means. So in those situations, the bill would be higher.
Okay. Thank you, Jasmine.
No problem.
Yeah. And please, everybody, feel free to ask questions. That is what we're here for. So please, put your hand up or type them in the chat. Don't hesitate. Let me put that back on the screen for you, Jasmine. I thought maybe we were going to go back to the other screen there.
No worries. Awesome. Thank you. So we've all kind of seen now what the Explorer currently is capable of. And so now we want to sort of give you a sneak peek about these features that we're really excited and are currently in development. And these all particularly target new buildings. So one of these first things that we're excited to bring to you are template policies. So these are based on the ordinance approaches that Misty discussed earlier. So the idea here is that if you know that you want to follow one of those approaches, like electric preferred, you'll be able to go in and directly use that template to generate a policy that will then follow that approach. So it really streamlines the process for you. We also are excited to bring a full and very functional impact tab for your new construction policy. So this will aggregate all of your policy impacts. It's much like the one that we currently have for existing residential policies. So if you have 2 climate zones, it will aggregate your impacts for both of those climate zones and display them there. You will also be able to compare new construction policies that you've built and see how, for example, an electric preferred versus an electric only policy, compare what about their impacts differs, which will be really helpful for you guys, we hope. We'll also be adding additional studies as they're available to us. We know you guys are really interested in, the fully published single family study and the multifamily study, and we're excited to bring those to you when we can. And then lastly, like Eric mentioned, you will be able to download requirements tables soon and then use those as you see fit in your materials and share them with colleagues and stakeholders. And then Misty, if you want to go to the next one, that's it from us. So I'll hand it back over to you, Misty.
All righty. Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you, Eric. I'm going to just wrap up fairly quickly here with just an overview of some of the additional resources that the program provides. In addition to the Explorer, we, as Jasmine mentioned and I mentioned, we prepare cost effectiveness analyses for statewide use. Model language for the ordinance so that you can, you're not starting from a blank page, at least. You don't have to look up all of the code references yourself and other such things. At least some of that's done for you. And then we also have several other resources and tools. We can provide technical support to staff. If you have questions along the way, please contact us. There are several ways to contact us, either via the website. We have a contact thing. The Explorer itself has a little chat bot that you can use to contact. You'll reach Jasmine. And of course, you can always call or email any of us. We also try to communicate the study results and other information as broadly as we can to all of our stakeholders, and we have a little newsletter if you'd like to sign up for that. We publish that monthly. So that also has a lot of information about when studies are released and other Reach Codes events. Okay. Right now, these are the studies we have underway for the 2022 code cycle. We mentioned the single family study a lot. That was the first two that we had results for. We are currently adding results for ADUs or accessory dwelling units to that study now. Those will be available in the next iteration. We also have a multifamily study underway. It's got two different prototypes, a 3-story and then a 5-story. The 5-story is actually mixed use with commercial on the bottom, retail. And a non-residential study as well, which has 4 pretty common occupancy types: offices, retails, small hotel, and in this case, the restaurant is a quick service restaurant. So it's not like a full fine dining kind of establishment, more like fast food or, lunch diner kind of thing. Okay, and then for existing buildings, we've already completed these studies. There is a single family and a low-rise multifamily study existing. We also have a non-res alterations. I apologize. There should be a non-residential study here, which I've left off. Sorry about that. And then we are working on an electric heating for pools and spas study right now. We are hoping to have the residential results within the next few weeks and the commercial results to follow. And I think I saw a quick flash of a question. 4 stories. 4 stories, typically it's 3 habitable stories and below are low rise. So anything above that is typically considered high rise, although the standards this time do not have they don't distinguish between the two in most cases. They've actually restructured the standards in this cycle to combine all of the multifamily into one section. There are still some requirements that are, if you start, you get into the standards, you can see that they're still split by low and high rise. But for the most part, they are now all together. But where there is a distinction, it's 3 or lower and 4 plus. Okay, and then, okay, those are all the studies we have underway. We're hoping to get the single family study out in the next week or so, possibly 2. Non-residential will follow shortly after that. And then multifamily, I don't have a date for yet, unfortunately. We're still working with the CEC's team. As I noted, that section of the code was entirely restructured, and so there was quite a big lift on the software side and the infrastructure side to accommodate that restructuring. And so that's still getting wrapped up, and so we haven't been able to produce final results for that one yet. But we're working on it, and we will announce whenever we have those studies ready. We'll let everybody know. Okay. And so for some additional resources, we've been tracking ordinance adoptions for the past few years. We've actually moved that to our website now, and it's actually a page on the website instead of just a downloadable PDF. You'll be able to search this page and so that you can find something in particular. It makes it a little bit more useful, and you can still download a PDF if that's what you're interested in, as well as downloading the 2019 list too. But we've moved it now so that it's actually online. We also still have the map, the interactive map of all of the adopted ordinances statewide. All of these things are on our local energy code site. The map gives you much the same information as in the adopted ordinance page, and it also allows you to download the ordinance itself, as well as the staff report that was presented at the council or board meeting when the ordinance was adopted. So you can get a little bit of contextual information there as well. Eric mentioned and Jasmine mentioned that we have model ordinance language. And he showed you can get those through the Explorer. You can also get them directly on the local energy code site. We are developing fact sheets. We have some already available and others that are coming soon. We have a fact sheet about our flexible compliance path for existing buildings using the Explorer, and another one on the new electric vehicle requirements in Calgary. And we are developing a couple others at the moment that will be published soon, as well as an executive summary for the cost effectiveness studies. We're hoping that this will help with outreach, so that instead of sending people the whole study or some pieces of it, that you can send them an executive summary and they can at least get the idea from that. We are hoping that'll be ready in the next few weeks, and that will now be accompanying all the studies as we go forward. We're working on some implementation materials. We've been focused on adoption first, but we know that implementation will be coming soon, and so we are working on some materials there, checklists, handouts, things like that that document the ordinance structures, help with communicating the requirements to permit applicants as well as to internal staff. We also do webinars and training, much like this one, and they are posted on our site. We have an events page on our site. We post all of our PDFs and recordings there, as well as on our new YouTube channel. We have all of our recordings from all of our webinars there. So I will make sure that all of these links are available to you so that you can reach these things easily. We have some other resources. We've been updating our website as well. We've got a lot of links to resources on that page, as well as other features. We encourage you to take a look, and if you have any suggestions, please give me don't hesitate to send those in via the website. We'll be happy to entertain any other thoughts that you might have about how we can improve that. So with that, I will wrap things up and open things up for questions, if you have any questions.
Yes, did we answer the core question about including 2 climate zones in the model ordinance?
Can you repeat that, Lincoln? I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, so Corey asked about including 2 climate zones in the model ordinance. It's a third question.
Okay, and I will give that to Eric. Eric, do we have that ability at this point? I believe we can.
Yes, so the tool, and sorry, Corey, I, for some reason, can't see the chat, so I don't see your question, but Lincoln sent it to me. So you asked if the model ordinance can support 2 climate zones. So the model ordinance document itself, yes, you can create a policy from that document for more than one climate zone. And then in the tool itself, yes, we support as many climate zones as your city has.
Great, thank you. Yeah, there's some with 4 or 5. Any other questions or comments? Things are very quiet this morning. Okay, and I noticed we had a couple of folks indicate that they would like us to put an ordinance together for them. Anybody else interested in that? We can send that off to you. If so, just drop your name or yes in the chat. Okay, give folks one more minute if there's no other comments or questions. Alrighty. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up a little bit early today. I want to thank Eric and Jasmine for all of your hard work on the tool, as well as the rest of the team, and all of you for making the time to attend today. We really appreciate it. We know you're all really busy, and so thank you very much. And if there's anything we can do to assist you as you move along your process, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are happy to help where we can. Thank you very much.